I want to take you back to March 30th, 1981, to the Washington, D.C. Hilton Hotel. It's a cloudy, gray, humid day, about 65 degrees. And a newly elected President, Ronald Reagan, has just entered the VIP entrance to go give a speech to the American Federation of Labor. And across the street are tourists and onlookers. Right in front of me are 3 presidential limousines. 12 feet over there is the press line with videographers, newspaper reporters, and so forth. And in the lobby is a fellow by the name of John Hinckley Jr., who's having a bit of a psychotic breakdown. He's obsessed with American actress Jodie Foster, and he wants to do something to impress her. He's also got a loaded handgun in his jacket. Now, President Reagan just finished his speech. He's walking out the VIP entrance, and he waves at the onlookers over there. And here's a photo of that exact moment. He's waving across the street. And I want to direct your attention to the police officers and the Secret Service agent, Tim McCarthy, who's in blue right there. They're looking at the president, not the press line. And that's important because Mr. Hinckley has walked over to the press line and is watching everything unfold. And here's what happens next. As the police officers turn and look at the president, it creates an open line between Hinckley and the president. And he pulls out his gun and decides he's going to shoot the president. Bang! First shot hits James Brady, the press secretary, in the head. He goes down. Bang! Second shot hits Officer Thomas Delante in the back. He goes down. Bang! The third shot goes high and wide. Now, when the first shot breaks out, Tim McCarthy, he does the most unnatural human thing. He turns to the bullets and makes himself a human shield, and bang, the fourth shot hits him in the stomach. He goes down. Now, as that's happening, Agent Jerry Parr, who's behind the president, tackles the president, pushes him into the limousine. Just as the fifth shot, bang, it hits the side of the limousine and goes right into Reagan's outstretched side. They pile into the limousine just as the sixth shot, bang, goes off wide, never to be found. They take Reagan off to the hospital. He survives. Everybody survives that day. What did not survive that day was the Secret Service tactics. They had to answer some uncomfortable questions, like how could a random person with a loaded gun get so close to the president? How could the police officers look at the president instead of where potential threats were? And why was nobody wearing a bulletproof vest? They certainly had them. So the Secret Service went and they created a new set of methodologies for protecting presidents and dignitaries. And so the first thing they did is they've created layers of defense. And that first layer is intelligence. How can they use data and analytics to avoid risk days, months, and weeks in advance? How can we use intelligence to prevent risk from it ever occurring? The next layer is tools. How can we use physical tools, cyber tools, to prevent risk when the president is traveling, wherever the president is? And that's everything from access control to bulletproof vests to armored cars, Air Force One, etc. And the last and most important area is the people. The people are the most trained, the most capable, they're the most expensive, and they can deal with unexpected situations. And so, as we think about protecting presidents, this methodology works really well. And I would argue this is a great methodology for protecting our supply chains. And in fact, I just wrote a book about this, well, at least part of that. And so you can read a lot about it. But I want to talk about the people part. in particular today. The theme of this conference is Make Tech Work. I would argue people make tech work. We make tech work. And you'll see that a little bit more. But how do we train that? How do we train people? I can tell you how we don't train people. Learning management systems. And how do I know this? I know this because all of us take a cybersecurity training every year. And despite that, somehow we manage to keep clicking on the link to put ransomware on our computers. So clearly something's not working. And because I'm that person, I took some of these screenshots, and you can see of what they tell us. It says phishing is social engineering. Phishing is harmful. You can put viruses on your machine. There are different types of phishing. Be aware. What does that even mean? I have no idea what any of that means. That does not tell me anything I need to know to protect me. However, I can teach you everything you need to know about preventing from getting phished with one question. Well, maybe not everything, but with one question, I can teach you a lot about phishing. My question to you is, how would you phish me? You probably go to Google, you'd search, you'd find out as much information about me as you can. You find out I live in the Bay Area, I'm vegan, I'm trans, and I drive an electric car, on and on and on. And then you would compose an email, a phishing email, to try to get me to click on that link. Not only that, now you could probably use ChatGPT to create that email, which hackers are doing now. And so, and by the way, I encourage you, try to phish me. It's a good exercise. But you can learn more about phishing by doing it than some silly system. And to go even further, how do we learn? That's the question I ask. So learning must be 5 things. It must be personal, it must have reflective time, it must be generative, it must be failure-driven, and it must be social. We learn through social interactions. That's one of the many reasons why this conference is so great. There's so many social interactions, and I witness everybody. I'm learning, everybody's learning. It's social. Failure-driven. Fail fast, right? Everybody fails fast here. We learn by failure. Think about a video game. It's one series of failures after another. Generative. That example of phishing. I didn't give you the answer. I let you figure out how you would do it versus the system that just tells you the answer. That's why we don't learn from the learning management systems. There has to be reflective time. I cannot pummel you with information and expect you to retain it. You'll lose most of it by the time you leave the room. So there has to be time for you to reflect on it. And then it must be personal. When I said phishing, and when I mentioned that we click on the email, the link that puts ransomware, I suspect everybody had just a moment of panic because none of us wants to be that person. So it's very personal. And yet when we look at all of these learning management systems, they don't teach us anything because they're not geared on these principles. Let me bring this to light a little bit. So this is Jeff Jonas, entrepreneur and self-proclaimed evil genius. And he ran a little experiment. He bought it with his girlfriend's kids and their cousins at a party. So he bought 5 crossword puzzles, 300-piece crossword puzzles. But before he went to the party, he took the first one and removed 30 pieces, leaving 270 out of 300. The next puzzle, he removed 100, leaving 200 out of 300. The next puzzle, he removed 150, leaving 150 out of 300. And the next one, he removed 294 pieces, leaving 6 out of 300. And these 4 were all separate puzzles. Then he bought a 5th puzzle that's a copy of the first puzzle and removed 270 pieces. And he took all of the pieces, dumped them on a table. He told the kids nothing of his malfeasance. He said, go do it. Took the kids 22 minutes to figure out that there was some duplicates. Took them 32 minutes to figure out that some pieces were missing. Took them 38 minutes to start to put together some of the imagery. At 2 hours and 10 minutes, they figured out that it was 4 puzzles. And at 2 hours and 18 minutes, they figured out that it was 4 puzzles with a few random pieces thrown in. And this is a perfect example of the kids were engaged in social learning. It was generative. He did not tell them anything about that, of what he had done. They figured that out themselves. And it was failure driven. Think about how many failures happened in those 2 hours and 18 minutes. So that's how humans learn. Now let's talk about humans and machines, because that's the next big thing. So whenever you want to learn anything about technology, look at the US Defense Department. We spend a ridiculous amount of money dreaming about preparing and building for the next generations of war. That's not a political commentary, that's a fact. And so recently, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, the creators of the internet, did an experiment with US Marines and autonomous robots on the battlefield. And it's important to note that the US Marines in this equation were specifically chosen. And the Marines have a particular ethos, and I think it's best described by former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, who described the Marines as, quote, the Marines I have seen around the world have the cleanest bodies, the filthiest minds, the highest morale, the lowest morals, and of any group of animals I have ever seen. Thank God for the United States Marine Corps. And so DARPA engineers went out to the desert with Marines, and they ran for 7 days a series of exercises with the Marines and the robots. These are the Marines, these are the robots, and the robots would go ahead, they would go behind, they'd figure out what was going on, they would do situational awareness, they would figure out who's an enemy, who's not. So they're really mapping the future battlefield. And it all went great for 7 days. But on the 8th day, the engineers asked the Marines to go against the robot. And so they set up the robot, like it is here, completely 360 degrees, and they challenged the Marines to touch the robot without being identified as humans. And this is where the Marines' adapt and overcome methodology comes in. That's their ethos, adapt and overcome. So the first 2 Marines, they just somersaulted 300 meters over and over and over, and then touched the robot. They won that round. The next guy went to a fir tree, cut all the branches off, put them into his uniform, and put them out, holding on to them, and, quote, walked like a fir tree. I'm going to repeat that in case you missed that. He walked like a fir tree. I don't know how you walk like a fir tree, but he walked right up to that robot and touched it. But the last 2 guys are my absolute favorite. They picked up cardboard boxes, put them over their heads like a Bugs Bunny cartoon, and they just walked right up towards the robot. And they're mic'd up, there's cameras on them, there's mics, and these 2 really buff, burly Marines, they're giggling. They're just giggling because they're so pleased with themselves. And of course, they walk up to the robot and they touch it. This is a great example of where humans come in with their creativity and versus what the robots can do. The robots can do human identification, but it's not perfect. Humans can be very creative when they want to be. And this is why, if you go back to my Secret Service example, where the agents are there, the people in that equation are for the unexpected. It's the unexpected for why people are so important. So, with that, and with an immense amount of excitement and relief, I am pleased to announce the launch of my new book. Before I say anything about it, I want to thank Matthias, who's sitting right here. His support has been immeasurable in helping me to get to this day and bring it to you today. Thank you. And of course, my wife and dogs and colleagues and who I torture all the time. and Rachel Coutts, who wrote the foreword. But building on that theme of creativity, I'm asking you to look at our supply chains with that same creative energy, because we'll find the risk. That's where the risk is. It's where we're not looking today. And we as humans have to do that. And there's nothing, like, tools are great, but we need to think back to those layers of defense. And the reason that I am bringing this message here is because the greatest risks to every supply chain come through the third parties. Who manages third parties? We do. And so that's the thesis of the book. I would like to note that it is more of a graduate level class in supply chain, where we take different topics and go deep under a loosely held umbrella that ties it all together. There's a lot of various information in there. Now, Kearney is pleased to offer everybody in attendance today, those of you out on the live stream, a free preview digital copy. And so you can do that. You can download it now. You can hopefully not crash Kearney servers. And then next week and thereafter, it'll be on Amazon for print and Kindle and all the other stuff. If you want to listen to it, I have recorded it and I'm releasing it on YouTube for free. Anybody can listen to it. I'm going to release each chapter each week, so I'll do it episodically. And it's just me at my house, me, a mic, and Gen AI. And if you want to know more about that statement, you can come to my Ask Me Anything later. But essentially, it's just my voice recording it, which was an interesting use of technology. So with that, I'm going to close by saying that when I look around at the excitement, the innovation, and the camaraderie in this room, I'm proud to be part of procurement. I love this. And without a doubt, we are absolutely making procurement cool. Thank you.